prepared to get your socks blown off. John has a plethora of knowledge in this industry or sector. And we are really thankful, John, that you are joining us today and taking the time to give us information. Please go ahead and start that share screen, John, and we'd love to take a look at your presentation.
Good stuff done.
Also, while John's pulling up that presentation, John, you'll want to make sure that you unmute your microphone and share your screen. If everybody on the other end could now mute their microphone except for John, that would be fantastic. That way we don't get any background noise, and we will have time for questions and answers at the end of each segment, and also use that chat room if something's in your brain that you don't want to miss. So, all right, John, can you pull up your presentation, sir?
We'll John, if you have your microphone muted, you can unmute it.
John, we're not getting any volume from you on your end, so find that control key there and look at the microphone, and you'll just probably click that to unmute, and then you should be able just to pull up your presentation just like we did earlier. Let us know how we can help, sir. We don't have any volume on your end.
We had it working perfectly 15 minutes ago.
Yes, we did. John, we still can't hear you. We'll need you to click your microphone and unmute yourself so we can at least hear you talking and be able to walk you through and assist you the best we can, sir. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
All right, and I think, okay, now we'll try it again. I don't know what happened there. I didn't think I'd muted myself, but you're dealing with a real technology whiz here. Let's see if we can. Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. So you'll just go to your open share tray and then your desktop and then pull up your presentation.
Open share. Have we got it yet?
No, sir.
All right, one more step here. Have we got it now?
No, sir.
You know, you led me through this thing 3 times and it was working. I'm not sure what I've done here. Hold on.
We'll get to it. Everybody's very patient in this group. Us safety professionals have to be patient or you aren't an effective safety professional. That's the way it goes.
All right. Open share tray. Now I've got a screen share box down below. It says desktop window. When I open that, I can see you, Rhett. And I'm opening the presentation.
We still don't have your shared screen yet, John.
Well, let's go through it again. Hold on here.
Learning new technology over these past few years has sure been a challenge across the board, but also a benefit in many ways. It's allowed us to open up some different aspects of training. So, John, how can we help you, sir?
Well, all right. I've clicked the open share tray. I'm looking at a screen share box at the very bottom of the screen. It says desktop/window.
Yep, click on that.
Click on that.
All right. Now I'm looking at a screen where I can share.
There we go.
There we go. Now we got it.
Do you see anything?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, I'm out of time. I'll see you guys.
All right, John, you have the floor.
All right. Thanks very much. I apologize for the delay here. I keep trying to prove that an old dog can learn a new trick, and sometimes it's a challenge. My name is John Salick. I've spent my whole life somehow in the trucking industry, dealing with freight and transporting automobiles with the State Trucking Association in Oregon, and some consulting with a company called J.J. Keller. And I have the privilege now of being involved with Approach and with PITB at times, providing some safety material. What I'd like to do is talk to you about a couple of things today. The first term, road rage, is going to be shared with aggressive driving. They're a little bit different. I wanted to talk about this to lead into the need to be so careful when we're actually trying to deal with a crash that has occurred. But as it was already mentioned, I think Rhett mentioned it, we're in some unusual times here. The stress that people are going through, trying to conduct their business, trying to conduct their personal lives. We're more in a hurry than we used to be. Things sometimes shorten our fuse, and we're not able to deal with something that may come up that isn't just right. So we've gone into a world pardon me, we've gone into a world where people get angry and upset and impatient very quickly, and that can lead to some pretty serious consequences. So before we get into the term road rage, aggressive driving, I think we need to be completely aware of what generally is one of the major causes of a vehicle crash, and that's some sort of a distraction. Distracted driving, and we've got a ton of material on it. If there's something somebody might need sometime, if you ever need material that you think I could provide, just get in touch with Rhett or Brian or Liz over at PITB, and I'd be glad to share whatever I might have. But I'd like you to think today in terms of traveling, not at 60 miles an hour, for example, but what does that mean in feet per second? If you're traveling 60 miles an hour, you're traveling 88 feet per second. And in a couple of seconds, where are you going to be if you weren't paying attention, if you've lost your focus? So there's 4 different types of distracted driving. And a lot of you, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. The first would be visual, taking your eyes off the road while you're driving, sightseeing, looking at wildlife along the road, looking at something that has attracted your attention, and you've taken your eyes off the road, and you may still be going 88 feet per second. The second one is auditory. You hear something that's not related to your driving. It may be a siren. It may be the children in the back seat arguing or fighting or screaming or something. Auditory distractions will also cause you to take your focus away from the fact that you're traveling. Down the road, you need to be aware of everything around you in front of you. Manual, this would be something where you take your hands off the wheel while you're driving. Trying to eat and drive at the same time would be a manual distraction, especially if part of the food falls in your lap. Trying to smoke and drive, and now the cigarette has fallen in your lap. So manual is another one. And then cognitive distracted driving, this is where our mind has drifted somewhere. We maybe are falling asleep, we're getting tired, we're worried about something that happened at home, a serious illness in the family, and our mind is on that serious illness and it's not focused. So there's 4 ways to be distracted. We're going to talk about road rage, and road rage will fit into all 4. Visual distraction that can result in road rage might be somebody flipping you off, somebody giving you the finger. An auditory distraction might be somebody yelling at you, calling names, a racial slur, but some sort of activity that's auditory, and you hear it, and now you've lost your focus, and now you're angry. Manual, again, this could be a road rage situation. It could be somebody, you've done something, you've shaken your fist at somebody, you've given them some sort of a signal that they don't appreciate. And then the 4th one is cognitive, and you've simply let your mind leave the job of driving down the road professionally to be angry. And now you've lost your focus mentally, and all of your attention is on the anger that you're trying to deal with. Maybe you, and it may be the other party. So when we go into this now, just these are all kinds of distractions, and every kind of distraction that you could experience can happen and result in road rage. Now, there were 2 terms, aggressive driving. This is a little less serious, maybe. This is a traffic offense, operation of a motor vehicle in a manner that endangers, likely to endanger persons or property. So some of these things we probably all do. And I don't think any of you, being completely honest, would deny that you've had this experience and you've been guilty maybe at times. Speeding, driving too fast for conditions, improper lane changes, tailgating, improper passing. These can lead to a road rage incident. And if it does, then that brings us into the next level, but that could also result in a traffic offense, which can become kind of expensive. It can affect, for professional drivers, it can certainly affect your ability to be hired by another company as a driver. Road rage, this is a criminal offense. When a driver commits a moving traffic offense so as to endanger other persons or property, an assault, assault with a dangerous weapon by the passenger or the operator, sudden acceleration, braking, close tailgating, cutting others off in a lane, deliberately preventing someone from merging, flashing lights, sounding your horn excessively, rude gestures, verbal abuse, threatening or using a firearm or other weapon. So this now can put you in jail. I'll try not to have a whole bunch of horror stories here, but about 3 weeks ago, my wife and I were driving through the Beaverton area in Oregon, where I live. And ahead of us, there was an intersection controlled by traffic lights. And there was an older man walking his dog, crossing the intersection, crossing the street. A car waiting to turn right was waiting for this older man who was moving quite slowly. So the guy in the car decided that he would speed the old man up by honking his horn. So he laid on the horn. The old man immediately did what he felt like doing, and he gave him the finger. Now he's almost across, he's on the curb, and the driver has left his car and gone around, and he slugged the old man and knocked him down. So when the old man got up, and I'm saying old with a tremendous amount of respect, that's the group I'm in. When he got up, he hit him again, and then he went to his car. I had gotten out of my car. I wasn't even sure what I was going to try and do, but there was no time because this guy was gone already. I had a camera out on my phone, and I got his license plate. A day later, we called the sheriff and turned it in and everything. A day later, the deputy called me, and he said they had found the guy and they had arrested him again. He had 3 criminal offense type assaults on people. So this all happened. And when you look at it, the guy didn't have to honk. He had to sit and wait. That's what the law is. You wait till the pedestrian clears. The man walking across the street didn't have to flip him off. And that either one of them could have stopped all of this by not reacting and not responding. So this is road rage, and it's happening more and more. We're seeing more and more instances. It's even making a lot more news. So what are the risks of being involved? You've got a verbal confrontation, which could lead to physical injury or death. You've got damage to your vehicle, possible traffic citation and a conviction, and it could lead to criminal charges and a conviction. All of this because at some moment you were distracted from your driving operation, or you're on foot and you're distracted from what you really should be doing, and you make a decision to react badly. And then we have road rage. This from Seattle, Washington, back in 2014, a road rage suspect on the run after mercilessly beating another driver through an open window during a confrontation on a Seattle roadway. Face puffy, filled with stitches, cornea scratched to go along with a black eye, beaten senseless after he says he accidentally cut off a second driver and then tried to apologize. The brutal assault left the 32-year-old victim with internal bleeding and a possible concussion. Beaverton, Oregon, the area where I live, a local teen sideswiped, punched in the face. Encounter happened Thursday afternoon. Victim 17 driving home from school. Someone started tailgating him. The driver tried to make an illegal pass and then sideswiped him. The 2 pulled over. He yelled at me, "Are you trying to play games with me?" Before I could say anything, he landed a couple of punches to my face. Police arrested a suspect after he left the scene. He's facing hit and run and assault, among other charges. I want to explain this a little bit. I was doing some training back in the Midwest, and the truck driver after the class came over and he eventually shared these pictures with me. This is a road rage result. He was driving by his own account. He's going through a town where he had to keep stopping for traffic lights. A car next to him with 2 or 3 guys were kind of trying to get his goat. They're yelling at him. There was a race component to it, and they're calling him some names, and he's doing his best. He told me, I did exactly what I was trained to do. I'm focusing on the road. I'm staying out of it. No eye contact. Well, it kept going, and he lost it by his own admission. He says, I just lost it. And I rolled the window down, told them what they could do with their game, and I flipped them off. And then they shot 9 times into the cab of his truck. By some miracle, the young man was not hurt. None of the bullets hit him. But that came from him trying to do what was right. The other 2 guys should have been put away in prison, but they got him. But so he's trying to do what's right, but at some point he let it go. He let it go, and he reacted with anger, and that was our result. The thing that may be harder for us, and I don't know if I'm inappropriate, politically probably incorrect as heck, but it seems that road rage incidents, and everyone where I've been involved or even aware of it, it's been men involved and not women. Now, I know that has happened once in a while with females also, but I've always kind of wondered, are we just so loaded at times with as testosterone and anger that we cannot control ourselves? And that's the thing that a professional driver has to do, has to be able to never let himself step into that world that's about to become violent or could become violent. So think about these things. Do you regularly drive over the speed limit? Do you try and beat a red light because you're in a hurry? Do you tailgate? Do you honk your horn or flash your headlights at a driver who you think is driving too slowly? Do you ever use obscene gestures or otherwise communicate angrily? And nothing better than that little sign the guy's holding there to initiate more conversation. We do these things sometimes, and we do them by accident. Quite often we just didn't mean to, but now we've got ourselves in a situation where we've made a mistake, but we could be causing somebody else to become angry. Do we cause it? Do we use our phone while driving, otherwise driving while distracted? Do we keep high beams on regardless of the oncoming traffic? Do you change lanes, make turns without using your signal? Do you fail to check your blind spot before switching lanes to make sure you're not cutting someone off? Now, I don't know your businesses, the folks that are joining us here today, but in the trucking world, a truck driver, especially the ones with the larger equipment, are always a potential reason to get angry. We're big, we're slow, and we're in somebody's way. And people will hurry to try and get around. They'll get into some kind of a jam, and suddenly they ran out of space, and they believe we cut them off, but they were trying to pass us when there was no place to go. But we can find ourselves potential victims just because of what we do in a tractor trailer or a large truck. The sweet little old lady who's turning 5 miles ahead, that's an exaggeration, obviously, but we know, the professional driver knows how important it is to communicate everything. Communicate with signals, communicate by slowing or starting with maybe tapping a brake or something. But we need to try and not surprise people. And in some cases, that may help us to avoid a road rage situation. Some of these things might be cute, but I think they also can create, any one of them can create a problem with another driver. Sorry for driving so close in front of you. That's a cute way of saying you're tailgating me. I'm not speeding, I'm qualifying. Hang up and drive. We all have every state, I believe, has a good, strong law about texting and using cell phones. In Oregon, with our situation here, especially with law enforcement in the Portland area, I don't think anyone's ever getting stopped for using a phone. It's just become so prevalent, even after the laws were passed. We don't see much of a reduction in people on cell phones, but to use that one, hang up and drive, I don't know that it's going to make someone hang up and drive. It may make them angry. I sell pot to your honor student, all kinds of cute things about somebody has the honor student bumper sticker, so someone wants to put this one on. The closer you get, the slower I go. One of the ones now, we just, in the city of Portland, right next door to where I live, we just hit an all-time record for homicides with firearms. Keep honking, I'm reloading. And the politics of the world. And I picked a couple of older ones here. Either one of these bumper stickers could cause someone to want to react somehow. So it's your choice. We got the First Amendment, free speech. We can put whatever we want to put on our bumpers, but remember that some of these could lead to an unpleasant situation. So to wrap this part up, the strategies for avoiding and preventing road rage: stay out of the way if you can. Give aggressive drivers room to get around you. Knowing when you're coming into a merge situation, look as carefully as you can at your place to be, and can you make some more room for that person merging? When you're about to lose a lane, says the right lane's closed ahead, a truck driver can almost always count on one or two or more cars trying to get around them anyway before that lane is down to one. Never insist on your own right of way if another driver's challenging you. Yield. You don't like it, but yield. Let them have the highway. The real goal is to get to your destination safely. Watch for other drivers' distracted actions: cell phone use, eating, reaching over the back seat to try and straighten out one of the kids. Watch for that and just allow yourself more time and more space to react if something goes wrong. And this simple little model is, it's always made sense to me. ABC. A is avoid eye contact. This is a person you may never see again in your whole life. Why prolong the contact? Why open up a door for more contact? Avoid eye contact. Keep your eyes on the road, on your job and what you're supposed to be doing when you drive. Be polite. Be kind of careful, even, trying to wave sometimes. Somebody may misconstrue what you're doing, but try and act politely. I've often thought, with all the electronics available, if somebody could maybe invent a little sign that lights up on your back window that says, "I'm sorry," or it says, "I thank you for letting me in," or something like that. But good manners won't hurt. And the C is call the police if you're threatened. Call and get help. Don't get involved in a potential violent situation on your own. If you can possibly do it, call the police. That's the material I wanted to share with you on road rage and aggressive driving. And I hope that this has been some help to you. It's just, I think for almost all of us, we're professionals, we're safety professionals. Our whole goal in life, the reason we even do this, is to make sure nobody gets sick or hurt or killed. And it's tough sometimes, because you really at times go home wondering, have you done your job today? Did I do something that really helped someone? But hopefully this will just be a reminder to you that we've got to be very careful, and it's going to be very tempting sometimes to get off on the wrong track in a traffic situation. Now, I think I'll go ahead. I'm not sure about questions, how they'll be handled. If we're okay, I'm just going to continue here if I can get this next one, get this going again here. All right. What to do at the vehicle crash scene or accident scene. What part of what I've done over the years is I've spent a lot of time investigating crashes, sometimes at the scene, if I'm able to get there soon, and sometimes after the fact, trying to work with whatever evidence had been gathered. And most of the time, I wish there was more evidence. I wish something else had been done at the scene that might be able to help. So let's look at some things that I think are important. And you may have a lot that you could add to this and add to the list of things that I think we should be watching for, and training our drivers. The first one, obviously, that needs to be starting to gather evidence and protect the company and protect the driver himself. The first one there is that driver who was involved. And they need to know, they need to be trained. It's worth talking about in safety meetings. Here's what we want you to do. You can role play and go to and make up a scene, and then the driver's out there trying to do what we've tried to train them to do to protect the company. So capture the evidence and document the facts. So 4 basic areas that I'd like to talk about: be prepared, secure the scene, notify authorities, and gather evidence. And we'll touch on a few things that I think are important in each of those areas. Being prepared, and I I have to step away and do part of my little sermon preaching about the importance of a pre-trip safety inspection for a truck driver. Professional drivers are expected to do a safety inspection before they ever leave with the truck. And it's pretty detailed. And for the driver who has to have a CDL, that driver had to prove by doing a pre-trip that he or she was qualified to actually be able to get their CDL. Part of being prepared is doing that pre-trip inspection correctly. And I've seen over the years way too many times that the pre-trip didn't even exist. It wasn't performed. I've seen drivers whose idea of a pre-trip is to sip coffee until the air pressure builds up and then out the gate. When I was in the industry years and years ago, I was in the car hauling business and became a manager at one of the locations. And I used to play games with the drivers because the shop would come in and say, this guy's not checking his oil, or this guy's not doing this or that. So I'd play games and I'd go out and set them up for something and then wait for them at the gate. And if they had caught it, that was great. I could give them a coupon for lunch or a company cap or something like that. If they had not caught it, then we had a little serious visit about how to do the pre-trip. One time I took the dipstick out of the truck. The mechanic said the guy wasn't checking his oil. Well, he comes to the gate and I asked him if he had checked the oil, and he said, well, you know, I did. I always do. So then I handed him the dipstick. I said, you'll probably want this. So I'm a real believer in positive corrective action. Maybe, having some way to reward the driver that's done a good job. But here are the things that they should have, and they should have looked for these things before they ever left the terminal or left the job site. The warnings devices, the reflective triangles, fusees in some cases, but I think we're going more and more to where, and some people can't use the fusees anyway. Fire extinguishers. I'm surprised from roadside safety inspections how often the fire extinguisher is either missing or it can't be used. It hasn't been checked, hasn't been refilled, whatever. It's rolling loose in the cab somewhere. The fire extinguisher should be there. It may be needed if there's a crash. Accident report forms, witness report forms, things that your company is giving your drivers so they'll be prepared if they ever have to deal with a crash. I think every driver should have a flashlight for more reasons than just because the crash happened at night, especially in winter months. We're loading, unloading, driving in the dark. We're starting in the dark. We may be finishing in the dark. I don't think a driver can do a really good pre-trip inspection if he or she doesn't have a flashlight. So that should be part of the package. The cameras, we were using cameras way back when they were just disposable, and you had 12 or 24 pictures. And driver would turn in that old camera and he had taken 2 pictures. Didn't want to waste film, but the 2 pictures he took didn't do us much good. We'll talk about those later. I think I'm a real believer, now that I've gone into the world of having a cell phone a few years ago, I'm a real believer that one of the best camera possibilities is the camera in the phone. And they take great pictures if it's done right. But we'll talk again later. We need to train our drivers how to take pictures at the scene. What's important, what's not important. Emergency telephone numbers should be available. That should be part of being prepared. Proof of insurance. In case you need to contact an insurance person, you should have the insurance information with you. Those things should all be there. They should all be spotted during a good pre-trip safety inspection. In addition to walking around the vehicle and making sure everything's working the way it's supposed to work, making sure the lights are burning. I'm amazed how often we get write-ups at roadside inspections for tail lights, turn signals, headlights, marker lights, lights that aren't working. Now, I know, especially for a lot of you that may be involved in construction, a truck driver on a construction site is going to be riding on something less than a nice smooth paved highway at times. Bouncing around, a light will break, it'll fail. Lights can fail going down the freeway. But when you see that there are 3 or 4 lights not burning, and this is repeated in more than one inspection, I don't think the driver is doing a good pre-trip. So something, again, that's another subject for another day, but the pre-trip is key to everything. The driver, again, as part of his or her preparation is to simply have the credentials, have the CDL, the medical certificate, which is now actually built into the CDL. There should be a logbook. Now, a lot of you may have drivers who are using electronic logs. Most in our industry today do. But even if you have an electronic log, you have to have 8 blank logs with you, daily logs. That should all be there. I'll come back to why I think this is important at the crash scene. The ELD documents, electronic logging devices, you've got to have an instruction sheet, a manual. Sorry. Those documents should be in the truck. And if you're carrying hazardous materials, you should have the documents for that. A DOT registration for hazardous materials, the shipping paper. Now, why do we have all of those things? Well, the driver is the one that may be able to do an awful lot to keep us out of ultimate litigation from a crash. And a good plaintiff attorney, if he or she can find these things, the fact that the CDL wasn't valid, it wasn't on the driver's person, the medical certificate had not been renewed, there were no log sheets, the ELD wasn't working and nobody had taken any action. The hazardous materials on board had no paperwork to identify them. These kinds of things could be critical in litigation if that ever happens. And of course, at the scene, when law enforcement shows up, they're going to ask for these documents. So being prepared before we ever get there, and hopefully we never have to worry about it, but we've got to have all of these things ready and working in good condition. Securing the scene, first thing, calm down. I can't imagine anyone staying cool, calm, and collected immediately after some kind of a crash has occurred. So just take a few seconds, get the truck stopped safely and calm down. Just take a few breaths, shut down your engine, and then if you're a smoker, extinguish any burning material, cigarettes, cigars, pipes. Make sure there's nothing else that could happen. But thinking in terms of there could be fuel somewhere that's leaking, there could be fumes. So stop all the burning material if there is any. And protect yourself when you're exiting the truck. This wasn't a crash thing necessarily, but a couple of winters ago, we had a driver on one of the mountain passes in Oregon who stopped, and he was just going to put his chains on. It was time to put the chain up. He stopped, opened the door, and jumped out of his truck, and a car out of control coming along hit him right at the truck, and he perished right there. If he had, I think and hope, if he had looked out in his mirror just for 2 or 3 seconds before he stepped out of the truck, he probably would have seen that car, which according to witnesses was pretty much out of control for some time, really having trouble. So first thing you do is protect yourself when exiting the truck. Set out the warning devices, be sure those are out there as quickly as possible. You need to communicate the fact that there's something going on here and there is some risk. And then check for injured persons and follow whatever instructions you've been given as a driver. You follow whatever instructions the company has given you about dealing with an injury, administering any first aid, those kinds of things. Again, it's up to the company and it's up to the individual whether they've ever had any first aid training, whether this was something that was required. And we don't want them to be trying to do things at the scene that they really haven't been taught properly to do. And yet at some moment they may be right there where they have to make a life-saving move, maybe not knowing exactly how, but maybe there's no other choice. When I talk about this, yes.
Oh, hang on a second. Hang on.
Sure.
Okay. I'm like doing 3 things at once. Are you there? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm listening to a safety summit, pulling a permit, and talking to you.
Okay.
Don, mute your microphone, Don.
Do we still have someone on there?
No, you can continue, John.
Okay. All right. So the question comes up, why are you setting out warning devices when there's someone laying there injured? We don't want to have another injury, and that's our driver. So I really believe the proper order of things is to protect yourself and get the warning devices out there right away, which are another means of protecting yourself. Then go to the injured persons. And I don't know if folks would agree with me or not, but that seems to be in my opinion, the proper order in which to do things. Notification. Obviously, you need to notify your company right away, and there's no such thing as an unimportant or a minor crash, in my opinion. If you've had some sort of activity that's caused damage or injury involving other people, you should be telling your company right away. Don't wait. If necessary, notify the authorities. You may be the one that has to call 911 or try and reach some official authority to come to the scene. And you may, depending on what the company wants you to do, you, the driver, may need to notify an insurance person or talk to someone who may call you from your insurance carrier. Provide information, if you're asked for it, to those folks we've listed, but do not talk to the media or to any other parties. Don't talk to them, and don't admit fault. Now, talking to the media, we're pretty proud in our industry of truck drivers that we have a pretty good safety record, and we think our drivers are pretty important to our society, and they're great people. They're pros. They've studied, they've trained, they've done everything they can to be a good truck driver. Well, now you're dealing with another professional. You've got a guy standing there with a microphone, and his or her goal in life is to make a really great news story for the 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock news tonight. And they are very, very good at trying to get you to talk, and then maybe trying to get you to say something you wish you had never said. There's no need and no obligation and no rule that says you ever have to talk to a reporter. You simply say, I'm sorry, I can't discuss anything with you. You need to speak to my supervisor and speak to someone in my company, but do not talk to the media. We, years ago, when I was with the Trucking Association, we had a media specialist come in for one of our safety meetings and asked him to teach us how to deal with that. So he pretended to be the television reporter, and one of our safety people would go up there and pretend to be the one who's from the safety department trying to deal with the crash. This media specialist had each one of our volunteers just babbling to themselves by the time they were done, saying things they never would have said if they had just taken a breath to say, no, I can't talk to you. They're very good at it, and they've got a job to do, but we don't want to help them make the news. The news is whatever has happened that they can look at, they can see, but we don't want to give them any information. And don't ever, please don't ever, as a driver, admit fault. I don't care what's happened. You do not admit fault. The investigation will determine responsibility either way. But we don't want to say, I'm sorry, I wish I hadn't done that, I was going too fast. We don't want to make those kind of statements because someone will pick them up. Now, years ago, before cell phones, before other easy means of communicating and video and all of that, I was involved with my company. We were involved with a crash that occurred on a bridge over toward the coast in Oregon. Middle of the night, our driver had a set of doubles and was crossing this bridge that looked real narrow. The lanes were no more narrow, but there was no shoulder. So it looked narrow. Anyway, he goes across the bridge and there's a car coming toward him. and they collided. She hit the trailer tires and wheels. Then she went off the road and there was an injury. The driver was he was just heartsick. This woman was hurt. They took her away in an ambulance. And he said to the officer, "I am so sorry. It was my fault. I must have crossed the center line." And he's thinking, I must have done that. Well, the evidence, unfortunately, I didn't get down there until the next day, until we found out about all of this stuff. When I got down there, we found enough evidence to show that she had crossed the line and we had not. But at that point, a lot of damage had been done. Even though we had all this evidence and we thought we were doing a good job investigating, our insurance carrier at some point realized that they were going to have to settle this somehow. And so there was a settlement that was quite expensive. But we believe all along that maybe if that driver had just said, "I'm not sure what happened," I thought I was, he can say whatever he wants other than saying I was wrong. So notification, talk to the people you're authorized to talk to, and don't talk to the media or other parties. Don't admit fault. Try not to have any conversation with the other party if there's another driver, other than maybe administering some help if needed, but try not to get into conversations there. They will be repeated and your words may not come out the same way by the time that person says, "This is what the truck driver told me." Notification. We have to gather evidence, and this is probably the biggest part of it. We have to take photographs of everything we can possibly take. And something we need to keep in mind is that our evidence may not even be used for a year or up to 2 years when the statute of limitations may end. But we may have to try and defend ourselves months, weeks later, and our memories aren't that good. We need to be gathering evidence at the site, at the moment, that will help to protect our driver and defend the driver and defend our company against losses. So the photographs are really important, and we'll talk about them a little bit more in a minute here. Names of witnesses. If you can get names, if they're willing to just give you their name and their contact, and you know they were a witness, then get that from them. And quite often the packet that our companies give out, or the insurance company gives out, will have a witness card. If you can't get someone who's willing to cooperate and talk to you or give you any information, try to get a photograph of the license plate of that person's car. We have something then that we could go forward with and try and reach the witness later. You want to get all of the other drivers' information. You want to get the proof that they've got a driver license. You want to look at their insurance card, their insurance information. Now, basically, that's about all you can ask for from the other driver: license and registration and insurance. If you can do it, if it's comfortable and everything, the driver should take a picture of the driver license, take a picture of the insurance card, the registration. If you can do that, you've got some great evidence right there. It's documented and should be available whenever it's needed in the future. Debris on the road. If there's been a crash, if there's been a collision with something else or with another vehicle, there's going to be debris. There will be things that might help to determine how fault will be administered. If you take pictures, you want to take pictures that might show skid marks, might show a gouge in the pavement, might show where a piece of debris is laying. All of these things could help at some point months away to determine how this crash really happened and who might have been responsible. So take good, clear pictures of damaged parts. Note the location of the parts. I don't think our drivers all carry tape measures with them or some other things that an accident reconstructionist would have, but anything they can do, maybe to note the distance or something between a telephone pole and the debris or the crash site. But the key is for the driver to look around and say, what can I do to help protect me and defend my company months down the road? What should I be documenting and preserving? If you can do it, get the name and the badge number of the officer at the scene, and that shouldn't be a problem. That should be very easy to get while you're there. License plates of any other vehicles involved. Something I should have put into this slide here, excuse me. Pardon me. I think something we should add to this is the number of passengers in the other vehicle. Those numbers will grow in time. When I was in the industry, in the car hauling business, we had a crash, and our driver said that there had only been one person in the car, but we had claims of injuries from 3. Our bus company in the Portland area now, if there's a crash, the bus driver is required to immediately count passengers on the bus and the other vehicle if there is one, because they've found that suddenly there are more passengers on the bus than they thought. So it's unfortunate, but it's the way things work in the world today. So try and count the passengers if you can. And preserve dash cam video. And I don't know how many of you might have dash cams. I've become a real believer in the last 2 or 3 years. A lot of the work I do involves working with someone, a company or a driver that's been in a crash. And quite often I'm able to get the dash cam video. And it's amazing how much we can learn and what a great defense that video can be. So something, if you're not using dash cams, you may want to really consider looking into it. I'm sure your insurance carrier would encourage you to have them. So I want to talk about photos a little bit. Now this is from a crash. The way it was taken, and I don't know why, it's a little bit fuzzy, but it's also so far away you can't see the damage. This is so important. People will take pictures. It looks okay through the camera, through the lens of the camera. What they don't realize is it's not going to look that close up. So get as close as possible to try and get a good description, a good visual description of the damage that has occurred. So there's some damage to the tire. You can kind of maybe get a hint of it. And there's some damage to the body of that trailer. And if they'd been a little closer, they might have had a better, useful photograph. This is just a horrible situation. I was asked quite a few years ago to go back to Colorado and be part of a task force trying to find out why there were so many increases in truck-related crashes and fatalities in one county in Colorado. This was one that we had to investigate after the fact, well after the fact. A tractor trailer carrying cattle going down a straight 2-lane highway in farm country. And I don't know if you've ever been in eastern Colorado, it's flat. You can watch your dog run away from home all day long in eastern Colorado. It's just flat. You can see a long, long way. He's driving on a straight highway coming to an intersection, and there's a light, a controlling light at the intersection. This is what was learned afterward. As he's approaching the intersection, he's had the green for a long time, which would tell you, I suspect if I asked you and we all communicated right now, you'd all tell me right away, that's a stale light. He should have been preparing. He didn't really prepare. He had his speed built up pretty well. So he continued. There's a car, a little red car. You can see what's left of it in the photo. There's a car coming from the right. That car, the assumption is that car knew the area real well, and he knew he was about to get a green, so he didn't slow down either. And when the truck driver realized what was happening and that there might be a crash, he anchored it. Well, this is way, way before anti-lock brakes and all that. That trailer loaded with cattle came around and came down on top of the car. The driver in the car perished, obviously. A couple of things. Something just as a tip for defensive driver training, if you're ever doing any of that, and that's that people need to understand how to read those lights as they're approaching. And especially if it's an area you're in a lot, you have some idea of the timing on those lights. And if you're anywhere near a stale light, you should be preparing to stop. The main thing I wanted to tell you about, though, is that this is not a picture you should take. This is not necessary. If some professional, an insurance agent, somebody else wants to take it, but we don't need these kinds of pictures necessarily. A lot of blood and gore. It isn't going to do anything at this point to help determine anything with the crash. Now, we got 30 photographs from that crash. The driver was dismembered several ways. And there were pictures, individual pictures. This is not necessary. It's just too gruesome, and it may do some harm by trying to share these pictures. If somebody else in authority thinks they have to have them, let them do it. But we don't need it, because the picture we're taking, the message we've got right now, the picture we're taking is, will this help me? Will this help the company in the future? This didn't. Now, this is a crash scene and the ambulance was involved. If we look at it from here, you'd really have to look closely to even see if there was any damage on that ambulance, because the picture was taken the way it was taken. So here's the same vehicle up close. This is what we need. This is what you need to teach your drivers. If they're going to take pictures, this didn't do us near as much good as this one. This one shows us really the damage. The fact, if you're going to investigate something, this may be your only trip up there. You may have driven a long way to go look at this crash site. Take the best possible pictures so you don't have to come back someday and try and redo them because you were too far away or the picture wasn't clear. And with digital cameras today, it's you can take 100 pictures and get rid of 99 of them if you want. It's so easy. It was a little different when we had film. I'm told, and I don't know if this is true or not, I was told by an attorney once that with digital photos, it's pretty easy to Photoshop them, and sometimes they might not be the greatest evidence because someone could try and claim they've been tampered with. So I think the only answer there is, when you've got something that's important, take a few photos, take several shots, take different angles, and we can always throw away the ones that we don't need. Now, I mentioned dash cams, and hopefully this is going to come through okay. We had a little difficulty earlier. I mentioned dash cams, but there are so many things that they'll do for you. They will help you to determine preventability in a crash. They will be great for you if you're trying to determine whether or not you can appeal this crash to the DOT. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the Department of Transportation, has a program. It's been out there for a couple of years where if you've had a crash that meets certain criteria, if you were rear-ended, if you struck an animal on the highway, if someone was impaired, if someone came into your lane and hit you head on, those types of crashes you can appeal. And there's a process that's pretty easy to go through, and we could certainly help if you ever need it. But that process can be done, and you can provide evidence. It's almost like you're in a court, but you can provide evidence electronically of photographs, video, documents to help make your point and say this should not be on our record and it shouldn't be penalizing our DOT scores. So that's the importance of it. I don't have much to say about driver-facing dash cams. I don't know if they're a good idea or not. I think we can learn a lot from them, but I understand that there's pretty strong feelings and morale might be an issue, and I don't know. But the one that's facing forward can tell us an awful lot in a crash. So let's take a look at this. And this is one, the reason I have this is we appealed this to the DOT. When it was all over, the driver had to be towed. And that made it a DOT recordable crash, and it had to go on the company's record. We were able to appeal this because it's one of those in that special DOT program. And the appeal was successful simply because of this piece of film. One of the criteria of whether or not you can appeal a crash is if you've hit an animal on the highway. So it was a slam dunk. It was cut and dried there. And that's the way we want it to be. This one, I want to mention a couple of things when we get through it. You have to forgive me, but I think I still have a little time. Forgive me for actually straying from from what I'm here to do today, but I hope that you're all the same kind of safety person, and you've got this knowledge with you that you want to share at times. So I want to mention a couple things. But here's another one where the driver's proceeding. Well, he won't proceed if I don't hit the right button. Now, I want you to watch what's going on at that intersection and watch for a white vehicle coming from the right. I'm sorry, I can't get used to the fact that I have to hit a different button here. Watch for the vehicle coming from the right. You've got a truck turning left in front of you. See that white car? He never stopped. Now the dash cam protected our driver and our company. There, the other party was found at fault, and the other driver was cited. But what I'd like to do, let's see if I can. Okay, what I'd like to do is look at it again, and this is where I hope all of you, when you're dealing with a crash, you're looking very carefully at preventability. If we have a preventable crash, we have to take some action. Are we going to take action with the driver? Is there retraining required? Was there an equipment flaw? Something may have to happen if this thing could have been prevented. So this one, the other driver got the ticket. It appeared that he broke the law, and he probably did. He made that turn and he didn't stop. Maybe he thought he still had a green, I don't know, but he was cited. But if we look at this, now at this point, I can't stop it in the right way, I guess, but at that point, the car disappears behind the turning tractor trailer. Our driver right here should have been slowing. He didn't slow down. One of the values of electronic logging devices is the fact that it will show the exact speed of the vehicle at any time. He didn't slow down at all. And I believe, in my opinion, if that had been rated for preventability, it would have been preventable to the driver, even though the other party was cited. So something to think about. But I'm a real proponent. I'm getting to be more and more a believer in the value of these dash cams. Again, I've got one that I chose not to show you, but it's because I can't hide the face and it would be a privacy thing. But it's a driver-facing dash cam, and he fell asleep. Now, this happened just 3 or 4 days ago. He fell asleep, and when he tried to recover because he was going off the road, he flipped the back trailer. It was empty. His front trailer loaded, the back trailer empty, and it flipped over. He tried to explain to his company that it was high wind that did it. But the driver-facing dash cam showed he literally had fallen asleep, and then he jerked awake, and that's how the crash happened. I don't know, but I am a believer in these cameras. The front-facing ones will do a lot to help. So we'll wrap this up with this slide. Continuing to gather evidence. Again, I don't think you can do too much in working with drivers on now one thing on how to preserve the video in the dash cam. Be sure they know how to save that video and not let it get away. Be sure they know how to take pictures and take a lot of them. It doesn't cost any more to take 100 photos than it does to take 5. So take a lot of photos, remembering that this has to look good to somebody where they can see what you want them to see. Some other things to note at the scene. Is there any hint that other driver was using a cell phone? And there may be a phone, I'm just making stuff up here, but what if it's a flip phone and it's laying on the floor of that car and the phone is open, it's been flipped open? I would try to get a picture of that or point it out to the officer. What you're trying to do is see if there's anything that was impairing that other driver that caused that driver to get into the crash with you. Any evidence of alcohol or drug use, empty containers, typically. You may actually smell alcohol, and you might want to try and tell the officer. There may be some other evidence there of drug possession or something, but see if you can, just by, you know, not getting right into their face, but kind of wandering around and looking. Somebody told me once there's a great college course called MBWA, and it's management by wandering around. And I think that really can apply when you're at the scene. Things are going to be very busy, and you want to try and learn all that you can learn while you're there. So wandering around and looking at the other car might help. What's the condition of the windows? I was involved in one where we investigated at the scene and everybody was still there. The windows, and our driver, bless his heart, our driver had taken pictures of as soon as he did what he's supposed to do, he got his triangles out there, he got out of the truck, he went back, the other driver was okay, and the windshield was fogged over. I saw another case where the windshield had been iced over and they just scraped away a little hole to peek through. If you can document that, that helps to show that that driver may not have been in good control. Windshield wipers, should they have been working, and does it look like they might have been working? Safety belt use, if you can document that, that might help. Which lights are burning on the car? Are there headlights? Are there tail lights? Was there a turn signal? If anything you can see that might direct an official to see that the other party was responsible is going to help the driver, and it's going to help the company. So it's a lot of stuff to do when you're standing there and you're not very happy, you're upset. And it can get worse. We're humans and we're pretty decent people as a rule. And we're standing there and there's been a horrible crash and there's someone hurt, there may be someone dying, there's a lot of damage. You know it could affect your company, you know it could affect you. It's awfully hard to remember all of these things and do them right. So I'm a real believer, if you have time and if you've got the privilege of being able to have your drivers together once in a while, play the role and go through what you want them to do. You could do it outdoors around a truck. You could do it in a classroom. Teach them how to do all of these things. I think one thing I didn't put in there would be a tape measure. I think if a driver's got his own little toolkit with him all the time, he should have a tape measure in there. Something else, and these are more tools that we don't typically carry around with us, but I think it wouldn't hurt to have a tire gauge, a tire air pressure gauge, and a tread depth gauge that could be important. If you, pardon me, if you see that you've had a crash and the other vehicle, the front tires are bald, I would try and get a note of that somehow, because that may have been a contributor to the fact that the crash occurred. So look at it with what you think you might want to add. Some companies have their own little toolkit that has a tire pressure gauge, the tread depth gauge, a flashlight, all of those things right in there, tape measure, marking, you know, piece of chalk, those kinds of things. We used to be able to do a little more in accident investigation. I used to do a lot of accident reconstruction work. And one of the things we really relied on when we did the investigations was skid marks. Because there's a process you could go through, and depending on the surface of the pavement and the length of the skid marks, you could determine to some extent the speed of that vehicle from the skid marks. We've lost a lot of that because we've got the ABS now, so we can't always do that, but there are still things we can do to try and, for example, document the skid marks, the length of them. Where did they start? Where did they end? These things could help in a crash. So I think you all look, the pictures I saw, you're all way younger than me, and you never probably heard of a country music singer named Minnie Pearl. But her last words every time she finished her show was, "I'm all through singing now." And so I'm all through singing now. And at this point, not sure where we go from here, but we are finished. And thank you.
Thanks very much, John.
Did all of that come through okay?
Yep, it did. It did.
Great.
We really appreciate the presentation, and I'm going to stop recording and I'll put it up on the Smart YouTube website. It'll take me a few hours, but